Kansas football has a new offensive lineman, Enrique Cruz Jr., a transfer from Syracuse, will look to keep Jalon Daniels upright this season.
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on? Derek Johnson here. This is Locked On Jayhawks. Thanks for making it your first listen every day. Thank you to everydayers catching each and every episode of the show. We are free and available anywhere you get your podcast, including on our YouTube page. And on this bonus episode of Locked On Jayhawks, KU football has a new offensive tackle, Enrique Cruz Jr., a transfer from Syracuse, former four-star recruit, and has a lot of playing experience with Syracuse. KU was looking to add and bolster its offensive line, and this certainly makes the competition even thicker for who's going to be those starters surrounding the big three for the KU offensive line and protecting Jalon Daniels as KU looks to have a big bounce-back season this year on the gridiron. We're going to get into information on Cruz. We're going to get into his scouting report, and we're also going to get where this puts Kansas overall with the offensive line room and where this puts them now moving forward in the transfer portal. Let's start with just some information on Cruz. So he is a 6'6", 319-pound offensive tackle. Big dude, comes in, plug and play, ready to play in terms of his body because he's played at the Division I and Power 4 level for a bit now. He'll be a redshirt senior this upcoming season, originally from Chicago, Illinois, where he went to Willowbrook High School, so he'll fit in with the many Chicagoans who are at the University of Kansas there. But he came out of high school as a four-star recruit in which he was the 220th player ranked nationally on 24/7 Sports. He was given a 91 grade as a four-star, number 23 offensive tackle in the class, number 4 player in the state of Illinois. Then he goes to Syracuse and ends up being somebody who his scouting report in high school coming out was the expectation to be somebody who's a 4th to 7th round pick. So very real potential on what he could become. Goes to Syracuse in 2021, in which he redshirted his first year, plays as a redshirt freshman a little bit with 5 starts in 2022. Redshirt sophomore year in 2023, starts every game at left tackle for Syracuse. And then as a redshirt junior this past year in 2024, he only appeared in 3 games. And so I don't know how this works because theoretically that 2021 season, even though he did redshirt, couldn't hypothetically he go back and say, okay, that was just the COVID year, in this past season in which I played only 3 games, I can take the red shirt that year? I don't know if that's something you can do retroactively, to which case Kansas would have him for 2 more years possibly. I don't know if that's how it works, but I'm just going to assume he is a redshirt senior with 1 year left to play. But maybe you could finagle it in some way to make it a 2-year thing if possible. I don't entirely know. But Kansas needed another offensive lineman. Lance Leipold wanted to bring in another offensive lineman. They needed some more competition. You feel good about Kobe Baines starting at one of the guard spots, Bryce Foster at center. They feel good about Calvin Clements starting at one of the tackle spots. But who's going to be the other tackle? Who's going to be the other guard? And certainly the competition is thick and heavy from guys, like Nolan Gorchika and Tavaki Tuiko Lavatu, but James Livingston, I don't know who else, Amir Herring, but some of those guys were banged up and injured during spring ball. It makes more sense to bring in even more competition there and more players that could possibly impact it. We know Kansas likes to have really a top 6 or 7 that they feel comfortable with, ideally even 8, where you have your 5 you feel comfortable with, your 6th guy is kind of rotating in, and then your 7th and 8th guys are subs that maybe one can play both guards and one can play both tackle spots. Maybe one can play left guard, left tackle, one can play right guard, right tackle. They like to have that ability, and so this moves you closer to feeling comfortable at where you are, and obviously an experienced player where he should be able to come in and body-wise be ready to kind of go right off the bat. All right, so what is the scouting report for Cruz that he's bringing to the table? What does the overall offensive line room look like? Where does he probably fit in? Is he going to start? All those questions coming up in just a moment on Locked On Jayhawks. This bonus episode of Locked On Jayhawks is brought to you by Supply House. Get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trades, Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400-plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast, from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free TradeMaster program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it's your turn. Join the TradeMaster program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code S-H-5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. I continue on with this episode of Locked On Jayhawks. Enrique Cruz joins KU. I found this interesting too. There's a tweet that came from, it's at JWill33. I don't know if he's like a guardian or a relative or what with Enrique Cruz, but he posted a picture of him with Brad Garlinghouse. So if you don't know who he is, he's like a big-time KU donor. He's like, I think his net worth is like $10 billion. He has done very well for himself as a professional. Went to KU. I think he went to like Harvard after. Very smart guy, obviously. And I'm sure he's as big as, like you hear about David Booth all the time. He's got his names on buildings and Horish and stuff like that. Garlinghouse is a gigantic KU donor as well that really helps KU, get stuff they want. Hey, anyway, he posted a picture with him and he said, it was nice to meet you. Hopefully you can make it out to a game this year so you can watch Enrique Cruz play. And I can't help but think, seeing that, like, did Brad Garlinghouse close the deal here with NIL money to get it over the hump? I don't know. Who knows? I just find that kind of interesting in today's day and age. And obviously the big time donors and supporters are important as ever for KU and all their sports and buildings and yada, yada, yada. Okay. So scouting report on Enrique Cruz. I mentioned that very experienced player. He'll be a redshirt senior this year. He's seen a lot of playing time for Syracuse. So you go back to 2021, he redshirts 2022. He plays a decent amount of games. He overall has 339 snaps for Syracuse that year, and he has a 62.4 PFF grade, which, pretty good, especially considering a redshirt freshman, right? He had a 71.5 in pass block and a 59.3 in run blocking. So a better pass blocker than he was a run blocker in that first year. Then in year 2, or I guess year 3 for Syracuse, but his second year of play. So as a redshirt sophomore in 2023, he logs 804 snaps, starts every game at left tackle, and the PFF grade goes down a little bit, 52.1. He had a 49 in run blocks, so, didn't have the best run block grades that year, but a 64.6 in pass blocks. So still, solid in the pass block. He did have 6 penalties that year, maybe a little bit more than you would like to see that season, but he's playing a lot of snaps as a redshirt freshman. Left tackle, obviously a difficult position, to kind of come in on, and a lot of times you're on an island. Then this past season, he only plays in 3 games, 33 snaps, 62.4 PFF grade, 71 pass block, 57 run block. So what does this all tell you about all this? I mean, you're getting a guy that has nearly 1,200 snaps at the collegiate level, so he gives you experience right away. I think you kind of assume, based on everything he's done, you're getting a good pass blocker here. And then you look at the running game, and the running grades aren't that great. He's never had a run block grade of 60 or above. But this is where I think it's interesting, and this is something I brought up on a previous episode. When you look at how KU runs their offense, specifically running the football, rarely does, well, I shouldn't say rarely, like they do it, but like KU, they don't have, Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State's offensive line that is a bunch of 6'5", 330-pound dudes who can move, and just, if you just want to run, a halfback gut play up the middle, they're just going to push guys back 4 yards every play. When you're at the University of Kansas and a lot of other schools who are not, reeling in a bunch of 5-star and 4-star talent every year, you have to find ways to run the football with being creative. You have to find way, and that's why, like, you go back to the wide zone play that we hear so many times about KU football. What is the big thing with the wide zone play? It's getting to the outside, and it's getting offensive linemen who can move, who can get to the exterior, and then you try to get them advantageous positions when they're on the run blocking guys. And so you see certain linemen for KU, like Bryce Cable isn't the biggest, strongest dude in the world, but he had an unbelievable season for Kansas in both run and pass blocking. He was a good pass blocker, and the combination of his skill set into what Kansas asked him to do worked well. And so I think, so you look at this past season, first of all, you might be wondering, why did he only play 3 games after starting a bunch? Well, they got a new head coach in there. They got a new head coach who came over, and they did a lot of good things. They won 9 or 10 games this year. Like, Kyle McCord was leading him at quarterback, but he was bringing in a lot of transfers from like big schools like Georgia, Ohio. I mean, Kyle McCord's a transfer from Ohio State, right? And they became more of a passing offense. And so more of a spread offense, like just a different type of offense. And so I think this will be a better fit for Kansas. That I think, some of his maybe deficiencies in the running game, I think will be covered a little bit, that Kansas will be able to use him in a real way. And then if he just continues to be a good pass blocker, boom, there you go. Now, the question for me is he going to be a left tackle? Is he going to be a right tackle? Let's get to that in a second. This is Locked On Jayhawks. Thanks for joining us on this bonus episode of the show. Don't forget to check out the rest of our episodes here with Locked On Jayhawks, anywhere you get your podcast and on our YouTube page. And you can find Locked On College Football as well. So the KU offensive line room, I mentioned earlier, Foster starting at center, Baines at one of the guard spots, Calvin Clements at one of the tackles. I think the idea has been for Clements to be your starting left tackle. In fact, when we've seen him play, like that has been his role for KU. What if Cruz, though, does come in and he feels better about playing left tackle, where he, played all those games in 2023, and you have to move Clements to right tackle? I don't know. I guess that's possible, but in my eyes, I'm seeing Cruz as making the move to right tackle. But again, that'll kind of depend on how things go. And so I almost view it as like maybe it's a three-man competition between Cruz, Gorchika, and Tui Kolovatu for one of the guard spots and one of the tackle spots. And maybe it's Cruz versus those two for one of the tackle spots, and then it's Gorchika versus, I guess if you want to throw Amir Herring or something in there too, for one of the guard spots. And I think that kind of makes sense. But it just gives you more depth. It gives you more competition. It gives you another body that you can go to, whether it is a starter or whether it just deepens the bench a little bit, because a lot of the KU bench at the offensive line before this move is a lot of young players who are unproven, right? Like, Jack Tanner played a lot as a freshman at Tulsa, but PFF grades weren't great. You probably want to develop him for a year or two. David Abajian, Graydon Grimes, like Carter Lavrusky, Kene Anene, Anderson Kopp, all freshmen or redshirt freshmen. Even the transfers you brought in like DeAndre Harper and Tyler Mercer are both, young sophomores. So when you look at this for Kansas, it's as much of a move about strengthening the depth as it is about possibly getting another starter. Now, if you were asking me to predict what the starting lineup would be today, I think I would go Clements at left tackle. I'd go Cruz at right tackle, Foster at center, and then I'd probably go with Baines at center. And then it is tough. Like, I guess I would lean Gorchika for the seniority right here, but I think Tui Kolovatu is going to have a higher ceiling than Gorchika. I just know he was banged up a little bit during spring ball. So, I guess if you're asking me to predict what happens if he gets healthy during fall ball, he wins the job. But because right now you don't know that for sure, and the known commodity maybe would be Gorchika. And we've also, seen them do that in the past, whether it's at other positions, right? Like, we've seen them go with the guy with seniority the first game of the season at other positions like defensive end or, some of these other spots to kind of like, okay, if it's even, give it to the guy who's older and let the young guy have to usurp him, right? And I think that's a cool way that, the staff kind of does things. So anyway, good addition for KU, trying to keep Jalon Daniels upright, trying to get the running game going, all that and more. And obviously, offensive line, there's not a lot of great ones on the portal market. And a lot of times if they are, they're going to a very big school. So you have to find guys that, they might have some flaws. Like Cruz hasn't had the best run blocking grades in the past, but that you can work with to work with their strengths and try to come up with their deficiencies a little more. And I think KU will be able to do that, especially with, how good they've been developing offensive linemen during the Lance Leipold era. That'll do it for this episode of Locked On Jayhawks. You can find our show anywhere you hear podcasts, including on our YouTube page. See you next time with Hello Jay.